Hello learners, let's understand the concept of constitutional law. This chapter of your module is quite unique. Rather than focusing on legal reasoning purely, there's also a huge chunk of legal knowledge that's part of this module. The constitution is the area that is very heavily tested across both areas, that is, legal reasoning as well as your legal knowledge. So it's important that you are proficient in both these fields as far as constitution is concerned. So today, we are going to focus on the fundamental rights, that is the 6 main fundamental rights. And we are going to quickly read the pointers which are under these 6 important fundamental rights. So without further ado, let's begin. The 6 fundamental rights that are very important are these which are displayed on your screen. That is the right to equality, the right to freedom, the right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, and rights to constitutional remedies. Now the thing is that by reading the name of these rights, it's obviously easily understandable that what is the meaning of these rights. But let's also understand that what all points come under these rights. So to start off, we are going to start with the right to equality first. In the right to equality, we have that there should be equality and equal protection before the law, and this is stated in article number 14. The second is that no discrimination on the basis of religion, race, sex, or place of birth should be there, and this is discussed in article number 15. The next is that we should have equal opportunities in case of employment, and that is article 16. Next, it is that social equality or banning untouchability, that basically we have to ban the practice of untouchability, and this is discussed in which article? Article 17. The last is abolition of royal titles. So we need to abolish those royal titles, and that is discussed in article 18. Now, knowing these articles, that which point is in which article is very important when CLAT or any legal exam is taken into consideration. So you should know that if I am talking about fundamental rights, so what are the pointers which are under these fundamental rights, and then which article is connected to those pointers. So let's move further. The next one is your right to freedom. Now, in your right to freedom, there are 6 core freedoms which are written. Number 1 is freedom of speech and expression. Number 2 is freedom of freely assembly. That is, you can do any sort of assembly, you can gather and stuff like that. Next is freedom of forming any sort of association, any sort of company, any sort of group, etc. Next is freedom of movement, that you have freedom to move from one place to another. Now just imagine, what if you people do not have freedom to move from say one city to another, from suppose say Delhi to Mumbai or from Bangalore to Calcutta? That is going to be very rude and very bad, right? That's why there has to be freedom of movement. Next is freedom of settlement, that is, you should have choice where you want to reside. The next is that you should have freedom for profession, occupation, trade and business. And this is discussed in article number 19.1. And also, you should have the freedom to hold, acquire and dispose property. But this one, that is the last one, that is to hold, acquire and dispose property, was omitted through the 44th Amendment to the Constitution in 1978. Which amendment? 44th Amendment. And in which year? It was 1978. So remember that this was basically omitted through the 44th Amendment to the Constitution in which year? 1978. The next is that we should also have freedom against ex post facto laws, double jeopardy and protection against self-incrimination. And this all is discussed in article number 20. Next is that we should have freedom of life and personal liberty. And this is discussed where? In article number 21. And next is freedom against your arrest, detention in selected cases. And this is discussed in which article? Article number 22. Now let's move forward to next right, that is right against exploitation. Now in right against exploitation, we are going to read these 2 points. That is, there should be prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor. That is, human trafficking should be prohibited and forced labor should also be prohibited. And this is discussed in which article? It's discussed in article number 23. Next is that there should be prohibition of employment of children in hazardous employment areas. What are these hazardous employment areas? These areas are, for example, the factories in which chemicals are made, or any sort of hazardous area which is not in line with the health of children. And this all is discussed in which article? Article number 24. Let's move forward to next right, that is right to freedom of religion. Now, under right to freedom of religion, we have 4 important points. The number 1 is freedom of conscience and free profession. That is, whatever I want to believe, whatever I want to do, I should have freedom on that. And this is discussed in article number 25. Next is freedom to manage religious affairs. This is discussed in article 26. The third point is that we should have freedom as to payment of taxes for promotion of any particular religion. And that is article number 27. Lastly, it is that we should have freedom as to attendance at religious institutions in certain educational institutions. So, we should have religious instructions in certain educational institutions. And this is discussed in article number 28. So, I hope you have understood that what is under the right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, and right to freedom. Let's move on to the 4th important right, that is cultural and educational right. Now, under the cultural and educational rights, we have 2 points again. The first is that we should have right to minorities to protect their language, script, or culture. So, any minority group has a right to protect their own language, their own script as in, maybe the way they write, and their culture. So, they have a right to protect that. And this all is discussed in which article? This is discussed in article number 29. The next is that right to minorities to establish and maintain their educational institutions. This is also given a right, and this is discussed in article number 30. Next, the last fundamental right is right to constitutional remedies. Now just tell me one thing. Suppose you have all the rights, that is right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, and cultural and educational rights. But in case someday any of this right gets violated, then whom are you going to go to actually complain about it? Or maybe under what right are you going to go to complain about the violation of these rights? This all comes under the right to constitutional remedies, which helps a citizen to approach the Supreme Court in case his or her fundamental rights are violated. Now, this section discusses the writs of habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, certiorari, the quo warranto as remedies for the enforcement of the fundamental rights which are stated in Part 3 of the Constitution. I hope you people have understood little bit about the constitutional laws. You can go to EduRev and attempt these tests to understand this chapter in depth. Also, find more amazing content on other subjects. You can unlock all the logged videos, documents, and tests for CLAT with EduRev Infinity Plan and ace your exams at less than 80 rupees per month. Thank you.